She was everything to him, his muse, his lover, a warrior who had walked through hell. He saved her from pain, from loneliness, from death itself. Every scar she bore was his too. He carried her fear like it was his own. For her, he shaved his head, scrubbed hospital floors, slept in chairs, sold everything he could. He lost himself so she could survive, and she found the time to lose him. The moment she felt beautiful again, she decided loyalty was optional. Her gratitude dissolved in cocktails, new outfits, and the touch of strangers. He was still standing beside her, but she was already looking right through him. Then one woman said, "You don't deserve to come last when you've spent your whole life being first." And that was the spark. The betrayal was only the beginning. What followed was a storm. And now you decide, was it revenge or was it liberation? Because when a man who's walked through hell for you finally rises, he'll burn it all to the ground. Greetings, my dear viewer. Please, tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis? Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. Ben had never been the sentimental type, rarely holding on to past moments for long. Yet, there was one experience that lingered in his memory, refusing to fade with time. Back in his first year of college, a clerical error during course registration landed him in a class he hadn't meant to take: art appreciation. It was a far cry from his usual world. Surrounded by students with neon-dyed hair, clothes streaked in paint, and a flair for the obscure, Ben felt like an outsider peering into a parallel universe. Although the subject didn't interest him, he managed to connect with a few classmates, most notably Kendra Kingsley, a quiet but sharp-tongued girl known in the art department for her searingly honest critiques and her remarkable ability to pour unfiltered emotion into her work. Kendra often spoke of her best friend, Rachel, painting a picture of someone who had the soul of an artist, but none of the confidence to go with it. Ben didn't think much of it at the time, but a year later, her name would take on unexpected significance. One night, Ben's roommate invited him to a laid-back get-together at an offbeat cafe just beyond the campus boundaries. The place oozed counterculture charm, dimly lit with antique furniture and thick with the scent of clove cigarettes. It was clear this wasn't Ben's kind of hangout. Conversations danced around topics like color theory as metaphor and the necessity of challenging social norms. Seated alone across the room, engrossed in a sketchbook, was a girl whose presence was hard to ignore. Oversized glasses slid down her nose, and her clothes clashed in a way that somehow made sense only on her. She radiated a kind of unfiltered energy. That was Ben's first encounter with Rachel. She was small and curvy, her face speckled with blemishes, her clothes a defiant statement of nonconformity. Her look wasn't conventionally attractive, at least not in the way most guys Ben knew would appreciate. And Ben, focused on his production tech coursework, had little overlap with someone like her. But fate intervened. A required course in computer graphics, essential for both her art degree and his technical track, placed them in the same class. The two had crossed paths before, but had never really spoken. This time, a group project forced them into close collaboration. They couldn't have been more different. Ben, a track athlete who floated near the edges of the popular crowd, and Rachel, who thrived in a world of poetry slams and smoky corners, sipping bitter coffee and debating philosophy. His social circle included cheerleaders and teammates. Hers leaned toward fringe creatives. Romance had never seemed a possibility between them, until working side by side began to change things. One night, while discussing their project, the conversation veered into personal territory. They laughed, relaxed. But the mood shifted when Ben's girlfriend arrived unexpectedly to pick him up. As he stood to leave, a strange sense of regret tugged at him. Rachel's expression mirrored that sentiment, quiet disappointment. The next day, her demeanor had shifted. She was curt, withdrawn. Ben, puzzled, tried to address it. "What did I do this time?" he asked. Her voice was low but sharp. "You're such an idiot." Not wanting a scene, Ben gently ushered her outside to a bench across the street. He told her to wait while he ducked into a nearby store and returned with her favorite juice and a soda for himself. "Okay," he said, settling beside her. "Why am I an idiot?" "Because you just are," she muttered, brushing away a tear. Ben sighed. That's not exactly a detailed answer. Her words trembled with frustration. "I thought you might be different. But you're just like every other guy. You all want the same thing. A girl with a pretty face and a big chest. Not someone who actually gives a damn." He paused, letting her anger sit for a moment before replying evenly. "Well, those girls do have one thing going for them." Her brow furrowed. "And what's that?" "They let you know how they feel." Rachel clenched her fists, the tension between them thick. Before she could reply, Ben reached out, gently removed her glasses, and kissed her, deeply, unexpectedly. It was her first real kiss, and the surprise lit her face. "What the hell was that?" she asked, breathless. He smiled. "Communication." That kiss led to another, and before long, they spent the rest of the evening wrapped in an unexpected, shared tenderness. Over the following weeks, they completed their project, earning top marks, and began seeing each other regularly. As their relationship blossomed, Rachel started to evolve. She traded in her thick glasses for contacts, saw a dermatologist, and gradually refined her wardrobe. It wasn't Ben who asked her to change. If anything, it seemed like she was finally seeing herself through the lens of someone who cared. While shopping, she'd often ask his opinion on outfits. He'd suggest ones that flattered her shape, and she'd tease him. "You just want to stare at my boobs," she joked. "Of course," he replied with a grin. "They're mine. You're just wearing them." Their bond deepened, not just physically but emotionally and intellectually. Ben, her first serious boyfriend, helped her dismantle years of self-doubt. His constant affirmations chipped away at the walls she'd built around her sense of worth. Then one evening, as she stood before a mirror, now noticeably transformed, Rachel murmured, "I look like the kind of girl I used to hate." Ben came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. With a smirk and a softness in his voice, he whispered, "Yeah, but to me, you've always been perfect. You belong to me, no matter how things may seem." Those words soothed her in ways she hadn't expected, and from that moment, their connection deepened. After college, their relationship progressed naturally. They got engaged. Ben was hired by a company that specialized in automotive design, while Rachel found a position as a layout artist at a contemporary art magazine. Ben's family welcomed her wholeheartedly, but Rachel's relatives weren't nearly as enthusiastic. At their engagement party, her sister remarked with mild disdain, "Ben's okay, I guess, but he probably smothers her creative spark." Her mother added, "They're rushing into this because she's expecting. It won't last." Despite the skepticism, Ben and Rachel built a joyful life together. On their 7th wedding anniversary, her mother couldn't resist needling again. "So when am I getting a grandchild?" Rachel replied, "We're trying, Mom." But the road to parenthood proved harder than expected. After years of disappointment, Rachel's mother, Margot, took it upon herself to arrange a visit to a fertility specialist. Ben's tests came back normal, and Margot's suggestion was blunt. "Maybe you two just need to be more consistent." But Rachel's results told a harsher story. Serious reproductive complications made conceiving naturally extremely unlikely. That night, Rachel wept in Ben's arms. "There are other paths, love," he murmured. "We could adopt." Her voice was small, broken. "If you want to leave, I wouldn't blame you." He held her tighter, his words unwavering. "I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to." She whispered, "Mom thinks I'll cheat just to have a baby." Ben met her eyes, resolute. "I'll never betray you. You're my everything." She sobbed harder. "Why would you stay with someone like me?" He gently cradled her face. "Because I love you, and I can't imagine my world without you in it." Eventually, her cries faded, and she fell asleep in his arms, held by the quiet strength of his love. Whatever came next, they would face it together, united in their devotion. The days that followed melted into each other for Ben. Time dulled the details, but the emotions remained vivid. One memory, however, stood out with sharp clarity. Just 2 days after that initial clinic visit, they were summoned back. Across the desk from the doctor, unease crept in as he explained that Rachel's test results had been forwarded to a specialist. Then came the shattering news: early-stage cancer, fast-moving and aggressive. Suddenly, all the strange symptoms made sense: the exhaustion, the aches, the mood swings. The diagnosis sent a surge of terror through Ben's chest. Luckily, the cancer had been caught in time, and the outlook was cautiously optimistic. They were referred to a specialized treatment center and given an appointment for the following day. Rachel endured a barrage of procedures. Ben took leave from work to be with her constantly, sitting by her side, comforting her, waiting anxiously for each new report. In the weeks ahead, she underwent surgery to remove cancerous lymph nodes, followed by rounds of radiation therapy. Ben never left her side. He lived out of the family quarters at the treatment center, ensuring she never woke or slept without him nearby. Though Margot and Rachel's sister visited from time to time, their coldness toward Ben lingered, as if, somehow, he bore responsibility for what was happening. Radiation therapy began to fail. The side effects were brutal, damaging healthy tissues as well. The doctors changed course: chemotherapy. By then, Rachel had lost over 40 pounds. Chemotherapy would take more: her strength, her hair, and her comfort. Amid the hardship, it was the hospital staff, especially the nurses, who offered small moments of peace. One nurse, Kara, stood out. She was tall, with vivid red hair and penetrating green eyes. She greeted Ben every morning with a warm smile or a witty comment, briefly lifting the weight off his shoulders. Kara quickly became more than just a nurse. Her night shifts often meant she was the last face Ben saw before leaving, and the first when he returned. Her empathy was genuine, her spirit fierce. One afternoon, Margot muttered something about Ben walking out now that things were so grim. Kara overheard. "This job breaks people," Kara snapped. "You think most families show up when things get hard? Most of our patients sit alone because their loved ones can't handle the fear, or they treat illness like it's contagious." She stepped closer to Margot. "But him? He hasn't missed a single day. He's the one holding her when she throws up. He's the one cleaning her up afterward. Were you there for that?" Margot's lips parted, but Kara kept going. "He walks her to the bathroom so she doesn't have to lose her dignity in front of strangers. You ever help with that? She started losing her hair, and he shaved his head so she wouldn't have to face it alone. Did you? No? Well, for what it's worth, he looks great bald. Not many guys can rock that look." Her voice lowered but stayed firm. "He gives her sponge baths when she's too weak to move, and when her insurance wouldn't cover the treatment, he went into debt for your daughter. He's been here every single day, loving her through the worst of it. Where were you?" Kara stood her ground, arms folded and eyes locked with steely resolve. "Choose your next words about this man very carefully," she cautioned. "What you say now will decide whether you're allowed back on this floor." Ben wasn't around when everything unfolded, but word of the incident spread fast among the nursing team, and they made sure he got the full story. When he heard what had happened, a subtle grin tugged at the corner of his mouth, grateful for Kara's fierce loyalty. But more surprising was the shift in Margot's demeanor. Her behavior towards Ben began to soften, even warm. During one of her rounds, she gently rested a hand on his shoulder, a small but meaningful gesture. Meanwhile, the chemotherapy had ravaged Rachel. draining her physically, but it had succeeded. She was now cancer-free. As she slowly regained her stamina, Ben took the lead in reworking her nutrition plan to help her body recover. She underwent several reconstructive procedures to remove the loose skin that remained after her dramatic weight loss. By the end of her treatment, Rachel emerged transformed, both inside and out. Having lost 80 pounds, her complexion cleared and her hair began to regrow. She ditched her glasses in favor of contacts, and along with her physical renewal came a surge of self-confidence. Old friends barely recognized her at first glance. Although she never had Kara's effortless beauty, Rachel had stepped into a version of herself she could finally feel proud of. But to Ben, she'd always been beautiful. No makeover could change how deeply he loved her. As her health stabilized, Ben returned to work, taking on overtime to chip away at the growing stack of medical bills. Rachel, still healing, wasn't ready to return to her job just yet. Their emotional and physical closeness, already strong before her illness, deepened. It was as if Rachel channeled all her appreciation and affection for Ben into their intimacy, their love rekindled and tempered by the trials they'd faced. Together, they felt invincible. During Ben's long shifts, Rachel started reconnecting with old friends and co-workers, spending her days in their company. Ben welcomed this change. She had always been more reserved, and it was good to see her coming out of her shell. After everything she'd endured, she had earned the right to enjoy herself. Ben assumed this was just a healthy step in reclaiming her independence and joy post-recovery. He didn't question her at first. What he failed to see was the quiet unraveling of their marriage. Slowly, Rachel began staying out later, often returning home visibly tipsy, sometimes openly drunk. "I haven't had this much fun in my life," she giggled one evening, stumbling through the door. Ben felt a knot of frustration form in his chest. While he was breaking his back working double shifts to cover their debts, she was out partying, living as if she had no responsibilities. Her style changed too, tighter clothes, more revealing than anything she'd worn before. When Ben brought it up, she brushed off his concerns. "I've never had a body like this," she said with a shrug. "I just want to enjoy it. It's exciting." Ben gave a small nod, but a sinking feeling settled in his gut. Since when was it about showing off? For anyone but me, he thought bitterly. She rolled her eyes. "Don't be that guy, Ben. It's just harmless fun." But that week, doubts began to creep in more than ever before. Something felt off, but he avoided confronting it. He was still head over heels for Rachel. After everything, the sleepless nights, the fear, the pain, they had survived together. He was convinced their love was unshakable. And at work, his efforts were finally acknowledged. His company offered him a promotion, a pay raise, and a sizable bonus. With hope in his heart, he began planning a surprise vacation for the two of them, a way to reconnect and rekindle what seemed to be slipping away. To make the occasion even more special, he organized a surprise party for Rachel's birthday, where he'd reveal the trip. He was sure this would bring them closer again. But just as he prepared to set everything in motion, everything fell apart. Rachel had a follow-up appointment to ensure the cancer hadn't returned. After her tests, the doctors said they'd call with results. On her way out of the hospital, she bumped into Kara, who greeted her with her usual charm. Rachel had never felt entirely comfortable around Kara. Even after her physical transformation, she still carried the weight of past insecurities, and standing next to someone like Kara only made them heavier. "Hey, Rachel," Kara said with a friendly smile. "Surprised to see you here without your ever-devoted husband." Rachel frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "He's working, I assume," Kara replied with a laugh. "I wasn't implying anything. You're lucky, that's all. Most women don't have a man who loves them that much." Rachel folded her arms, her tone defensive. "Why are we even talking about Ben?" Kara raised her hand slightly, signaling she meant no harm. "Most guys bail when things get rough. But Ben, he's different. I wish someone looked at me the way he looks at you." "I don't want to talk about this," Rachel snapped, cutting her off. She wasn't in the mood for heartfelt conversations. Her thoughts were elsewhere. With Ben working late, she figured she had time for a drink at the same bar she'd visited the night before. "Just one won't hurt," she whispered to herself. She planned to be back before Ben even noticed. As she stepped inside, a voice from across the room called out her name. "Rachel? Is that actually you?" The voice belonged to Kendra Kingsley, a familiar figure from college days, now staring in amazement. Her expression was a mix of disbelief and delight. "I almost didn't recognize you. You've changed so much," she said, scanning Rachel from head to toe. "What's new with you?" Rachel gave a breezy smile, lifting her shoulders in a casual shrug. "Just living life," she answered, her tone light and deflective, masking any deeper truth with a playful chuckle. Kendra tilted her head, unconvinced. "And what about Ben? How's he holding up?" Rachel offered another indifferent shrug. "He's busy with work," she replied, keeping her response clipped. They soon found a vacant table and settled in. It didn't take long before a group of guys approached. One of them stood, hand outstretched, and asked Rachel to dance. She accepted. Moments later, she was moving to the rhythm, caught up in the lights, the energy, and the magnetic pull of attention. In her blissful haze, she didn't notice the door opening behind her. But every man in the bar did. Kara had arrived. From her vantage point, Kara saw everything, every glance, every laugh, every brush of Rachel's hand on someone else's arm. She said nothing. Without a word, Kara made her way to the grill, ordered a sandwich, paid, and slipped back out into the night. As she walked toward the hospital, her thoughts began to take shape. Miles away, Ben remained completely unaware. He was immersed in planning something he hoped would bridge the growing distance, an elaborate surprise party for Rachel. He was pouring his heart into it, certain that the gesture would bring them closer again. He had reached out to Rachel's family, her mother, her sister, and a handful of her closest friends. He even took time picking out thoughtful gifts, wanting everything to feel meaningful. To his surprise, Margot had offered to help with the decorations. She'd never been particularly warm toward him, but over time she had come to respect the way he stood by Rachel. She didn't love him, perhaps never would, but she no longer resisted him. Still, in the days leading up to the event, Ben couldn't ignore the quiet shift. Whenever he came home, Rachel was on her way out. She no longer waited for him like she used to. And when she returned, it was often late, sometimes after drinking. Their physical connection had faded into memory. He couldn't remember the last time they'd shared more than just space. At work, even his co-workers began to sense something. A few of the women had grown bolder in their interest. Though he always politely deflected their advances, he couldn't ignore the creeping loneliness that followed him home. Then, one evening, just as he stepped through the front door, the phone rang. "Ben, it's Kara," came the familiar voice, sending a nervous tremor through his gut. "Hi, Kara. Do you have Rachel's test results?" he asked, doing his best to sound composed. "Not yet," she said. Her tone was steady, but serious. "But I need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet somewhere?" His pulse quickened. "It won't take long," she added gently. "What about the park across from the hospital?" A pause hung between them before he finally answered. "All right. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "See you then," she replied, and hung up. The park had always held quiet significance for Ben. It had been a refuge during Rachel's treatment, a place of stillness amid the chaos. He remembered sharing sandwiches there with Kara, waiting for updates, and the day she had brought the good news. The chemo was working. Maybe that's why she had chosen the spot. It was neutral ground, free from judgment. When he arrived, Kara was already seated on a bench. He walked over and sat beside her, offering a tired smile. "I'm not behind on any bills, am I?" he joked, trying to inject a little levity. Or worse, Rachel's not relapsing, right? Her face turned somber. She slowly shook her head. No, it's not cancer, but something's wrong. A chill ran through his body. He sat frozen as Kara carefully recounted what she had witnessed, where Rachel had been, who she was with, and what it all suggested. I don't have anything concrete, she admitted. No photos, no recordings. But Ben, it was obvious. She's seeing someone else. Ben let out a sharp laugh, more out of disbelief than humor. You're a great nurse, Kara, and I thought you were a decent friend too, he said, his voice shaking. But you've got this all wrong. Rachel loves me. She wouldn't do that. Even as he said it, the words felt weak. Kara sighed, her expression full of regret. I wouldn't be telling you this if I wasn't sure. I hate seeing you in the dark like this. Ben's fists clenched in his lap. His voice dropped to a tense whisper. You don't have proof. Just assumptions. He stood, ready to walk away. But Kara reached out, gently taking his hand and placing her other hand softly on his cheek. For a moment, he was still. Her touch was warm, grounding. I hope I'm wrong, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. You've given everything to her. It would be cruel if she didn't deserve it. She slipped a small card into his hand, just in case, and rose to leave. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'll be here, she said, then walked away, leaving Ben rooted to the bench, torn between pain, confusion, and a flicker of something new, uncertainty. Ben stood motionless, his eyes tracing her silhouette as she melted into the shadows, his thoughts a storm of conflicting emotions. It had been ages since he and Rachel had truly felt close, yet in that fleeting moment, watching Kara vanish into the night, something raw and undeniable stirred within him. Meanwhile, Kara experienced a quiet, bittersweet triumph. She hadn't expected things to fall apart for Rachel so quickly, but she believed Ben needed to come to the truth gradually, absorbing it in pieces rather than being crushed all at once. Hurting him was never her goal. She simply believed he deserved clarity. She couldn't pinpoint the moment her feelings for him began to shift. Maybe it started during those endless nights at the hospital, observing his devotion to a woman who barely acknowledged him. Or perhaps it happened later, when Rachel began treating him more like a servant than a partner, a man who had given up so much for her. Kara had always known she was attractive. Men made that clear. But Ben had shown her a gentleness and sincerity she hadn't found in anyone else, and she'd have given everything to be loved the way he had once loved Rachel. Now, Phase 2 was underway. 2 days later, Ben was a bundle of nerves. This party wasn't just a celebration of Rachel's birthday. It was meant to symbolize a fresh start for them. Over the past several weeks, he had sensed her pulling away. The late nights, the heavy drinking, the silence between them. It had all become impossible to ignore. Just the night before, he'd waited up for her on the couch. He drifted off, only to wake and find her already in bed, passed out cold. The next morning, as she groggily stirred, he greeted her with a hopeful smile. I've got something special planned for tonight, he said. She rolled over and mumbled a half-hearted, "That's sweet." Ben tried to interpret her aloofness. He told himself that maybe she was just trying to reclaim the youth and freedom that cancer had stolen from her. Perhaps this new, slimmer version of Rachel wanted to live the life she'd never had. He only wished she wanted to live it with him. By 6:30 p.m., Margot and Rachel's sister Riley arrived to help decorate the apartment. They moved quickly, assuming Rachel would walk through the door at any moment. Ben had kept the gathering intimate, just 6 close friends and family, hoping for a night filled with warmth and connection. But by 9:00 p.m., the mood shifted as guests started exchanging nervous glances toward the door. Still no Rachel. A few guests quietly placed their gifts down and left. Others hesitated, unsure. By 11 p.m., only Margot, Riley, and Ben remained. Ben, his patience worn thin, called Rachel's phone for the 4th time. At last, around 11:30, she picked up. "Hey, babe," she said, her words slurred. "I'm on my way." Ben's hand tightened around the phone. "Where are you?" he asked, his tone clipped and tense. "Mom wanted to take me out for a drink," she replied casually. "So I went with her instead of coming home." Ben clenched his jaw. "We had plans tonight, Rachel." "I know," she said, brushing it off. "We lost track of time. Actually, I went with her and my annoying sister since they're not exactly your biggest fans. I didn't want their negativity to ruin whatever you had going on." Then, faintly in the background, a man's voice called out, "Let's go, baby, we're waiting." Ben's stomach dropped. Rachel giggled. "Anyway, I'll see you soon and you can show me the surprise then," she said. She paused, then asked, "Is it a big surprise?" His voice came out low, nearly a whisper. "Yeah, something like that." The line fell into silence. Margot looked over at him, and in her gaze Ben saw it. Pity, recognition. She had heard it all. For a moment, he stood frozen, the truth hitting him like a wave. His world had just collapsed, and he couldn't find the words to react. It was Margot who eventually broke the stillness. "You know, I never really thought you and Rachel made sense," she said softly. Ben turned to her, stunned. "But I was wrong." "What a piece of work," Riley muttered. Ben inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "Thank you both for coming," he said, surprisingly composed. "I'll take care of everything here. She'll be back soon." Margot and Riley shared a glance before slipping out. Once the door clicked shut behind them, Ben crossed the room, opened the closet, and pulled out a suitcase. He packed quickly, just enough so he wouldn't have to come back. Then he scribbled a note and placed it on the kitchen table. Without hesitating, he walked out into the night, leaving everything behind. The next day, Ben remained frozen at his desk, staring blankly at the glow of his monitor. His hands hovered uncertainly above the keyboard as he scrolled through names of divorce lawyers. A few looked like viable options, but he couldn't bring himself to dial. His mind was a storm of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. He spoke to no one, barely acknowledging the world around him. To those in the office, it probably seemed like he was fighting off the flu or some bug going around. But in truth, he felt far worse than any illness could make him feel. He felt hollow. Meanwhile, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. Rachel was calling constantly, leaving voicemail after voicemail. He ignored every single one. For the next 3 days, he followed a lifeless rhythm. Clock in, go back to his motel, sleep, wake up, repeat. He moved through each day like a machine, burying himself in work to avoid facing the shattering weight of his reality. On the third night, as he exited the office, he noticed Kara perched on the hood of his car. Her face was drawn, her eyes red and puffy. The moment their eyes met, she slid off the hood and hurried toward him. "You never called me," she said, her voice raw with emotion. Ben didn't respond. He just looked at her, silent. The emotional barriers he'd built over the past few days finally gave way. Tears welled in his eyes as he murmured, "You were right about everything." Before he could continue, Kara wrapped her arms around him. He knew he should have stepped back, should have said no. But he didn't. Her embrace warmed him in a way he hadn't felt in ages, and he despised himself for craving it. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "I just couldn't let you walk into it blind." Elsewhere, Rachel woke up with a throbbing pain behind her eyes, her temples pounding. She groaned, rubbing her forehead. "What day is it?" she muttered, squinting at the digital clock beside the bed. The apartment was in shambles, bottles scattered everywhere, clothes strewn across the floor, a mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. "Ben can clean this later," she grumbled. Then her brow furrowed. "Wait. Where is he?" Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Annoyed, she threw on a robe and shuffled to the entrance. Peeking through the peephole, she sighed in relief. It was her mother. She opened the door, offering a sheepish smile. "Hey, Mom, Sorry for the mess. Seems your husband's gotten into the habit of vanishing, Margot said coolly as she walked in, her expression unreadable. Her eyes swept over Rachel. Where were you last night? And with who? Rachel stared at her, confused. What? What are you talking about? With arms folded, Margot stared her down. Or more accurately, who were you with based on the state you're in? Rolling her eyes, Rachel groaned. Seriously, Mom. Not this again. Then tell me why there are hickeys on your neck, Margot snapped. Rachel froze. Her hand flew to her throat, brushing against the tender spots. Damn it, she muttered. Ben cannot see this. She turned away, instinctively trying to cover them. Make some coffee, will you? My head is splitting, she mumbled. Margot sighed and moved toward the kitchen, starting the coffee machine. As it gurgled to life, she called out from over her shoulder. So, how are you planning to lie your way out of this one? Rachel yawned. Lie about what? Your birthday night, Margot said coldly, when you told Ben you were with me and your sister. Except the two of us were standing right next to him. Rachel's chest tightened. Her eyes widened as she took a shaky breath, scrambling for an answer. I'll think of something before he shows up, she whispered. You've got to help me, Mom. Margot turned to her, face twisted in disappointment. Why would I do that? Rachel exhaled sharply. Okay, yes, I screwed up. But it wasn't serious. I was just living a little. I never got to do that when I was younger. Margot said nothing. Rachel kept talking, desperate. You remember what that was like, right? I was always the fat friend, the invisible one. Guys barely even looked at me. Then Ben came along, and suddenly, I mattered. I looked better. I felt good about myself. For once, I was wanted. Her voice dropped to a softer tone. Now that I've lost weight, men actually notice me. They flirt, they chase, and it feels powerful. I toy with them, keep them close just long enough before tossing them aside like playthings. It's just a game, Mom, harmless fun. Rachel's gaze searched Margot's, looking for reassurance. I love Ben. I'd never actually leave him. He grounds me, dependable, constant. But honestly, he's boring. I'm always chasing that rush, and he's too consumed by work to notice. A quiet, weary sigh escaped Margot. Do you really believe that? She asked, walking over to the table. She picked up a small, precisely folded note. If that's truly how you feel, she said, holding it out, then you should read this. Rachel accepted it, her expression wary as she unfolded the paper. Rachel, I'm happy you found peace. After everything you've survived, you deserve joy. Conquering cancer isn't something many people get to claim, and you didn't just survive, you emerged stronger. From the moment I met you, I knew you were extraordinary. I fell fast and hard. For a long time, I believed in what we had. It felt unbreakable. But recently, I've had to face a truth I didn't want to see. I don't belong in your life anymore. I gave myself to you, completely. But it's obvious now. You've moved beyond me. If you read this and feel there's anything left worth saving, reach out. If not, I'll take your silence for what it is. I'll be filing for divorce. The apartment is yours. I won't be back. There's too much of us in those walls. I can only hope the next person you love gives you the kind of devotion I offered. I gave everything I had, Rachel. Somehow, it still wasn't enough. Ben. As the last line hit her, Rachel's legs gave out beneath her. She dropped to the ground, sobs racking her body. Margot remained still, her face set in stone. I raised a fool. Across town, Kara pulled into her driveway. Ben sat silently in the passenger seat. After switching off the ignition, she walked around the car and opened his door. He didn't resist as she guided him out and led him inside. He moved sluggishly, his expression hollow. Once on the couch, she studied him closely. He looked like a shadow of the man she knew, utterly drained. He doesn't realize his own strength, she thought. But I'll help him escape her. There were things she hadn't told him yet. A private investigator had been tailing Rachel for over a week. Kara knew exactly when Ben had walked out, and everything Rachel had done since. But tonight wasn't the moment for revelations. Ben wasn't ready. She let him rest while she changed into comfortable clothes, shorts, and a loose tee, and made her way to the kitchen. Dinner was simple: steak and a fresh salad. She placed the plate before him, but he barely acknowledged it, stirring the greens absent-mindedly with his fork. The silence was thick and unrelenting. Afterward, Kara reached for his phone. No missed calls. That was good. It meant Rachel hadn't even noticed he was gone. Not yet. Without a second thought, she powered it down and set it aside. Then she called the hospital. "I won't be coming in for a few days," she said firmly, leaving no space for argument. She turned back to Ben. "You need a break too." He shook his head. "I can't. I've got bills, responsibilities." Kara interrupted. "No more hiding behind work." She handed him his phone. "Call them. Now." He hesitated, then finally relented. He requested a short leave, dropped the phone, and didn't pick it back up. Later, Kara returned with a soft blanket and tucked it around him. Kneeling beside him, she ran a gentle hand over his forehead and kissed him softly. "I'll be just upstairs if you need anything," she murmured, then slipped away down the hallway. That same night, Rachel's anxiety reached a breaking point. Every unanswered call added fuel to the panic inside her. Where was he? She needed to explain, to make things right. Ben wouldn't leave, not him. He was her rock, the one person who never walked away. Sure, she'd acted on impulse a few times, but they didn't mean anything. Just distractions. What they did mean something. Ben had loved her when no one else did. He saw her, truly saw her, back when the world ignored her completely. He stood beside her through everything, especially the darkest days, when the chemo stripped her down to nothing. He'd even shaved his head so she wouldn't feel so alone. How could she have been so careless? She tried calling again. Still no answer. The dread clawed higher. She called his office. Someone must know where he went. His boss answered. "Ben's taking some personal time." The blood drained from her face. "He's not here? Where'd he go?" "No idea." The response came, flat and indifferent. "Oh, and he's not part of this team anymore. Got a promotion a while back." The words hit her like a slap. Ben, promoted? Since when? Doubt trickled in for the first time. Up to now, she'd clung to the belief that he was simply heartbroken, lying low, waiting for her to reach out and make things right. All she had to do was bring him back. They'd talk, she'd lay it all out, they'd mend what broke, and life would return to what it once was. After everything they'd been through, this couldn't be the end. Alone in the low light of her apartment, she kept replaying it all. Was that moment of recklessness really worth losing him? She had always thought herself immune to that kind of mistake. How had she become the person she once pitied? What began as a harmless thrill, a flicker of forbidden excitement, a taste of something she thought she'd missed, had stripped her bare. She saw it clearly now. She had never been in control. The attention from strangers made her feel powerful, but it was an illusion. She'd wagered something precious for something meaningless. Those nights had been hollow, just blurred memories, empty of feeling or meaning. Now, the only thing that mattered was what Ben knew, and how far she'd have to go to win back even a piece of his trust. Deep down, though, she already suspected the truth. Forgiveness might not be possible. Not even from herself. As she unraveled, Kara stayed steady, careful not to let Ben fall apart completely. They returned to the motel to collect his things. She gently encouraged him to grab some basics, then eventually convinced him to crash in her guest room. Bit by bit, she coaxed him out of his shell. At first, his replies were barely audible. But with time, full conversations began to take shape. There was only one name they never said: Rachel. 2 days later, Kara handed him his phone. When Ben switched it on, the screen filled with notifications, more than 100 missed calls from Rachel. He didn't speak, just deleted them, every single one. Kara noticed the difference in him. His jaw set tighter, his movement steadied. He was piecing himself back together. At work, Ben was finding his rhythm again. He wasn't okay, not really, but he was functional. Some co-workers had noticed Kara dropping him off in the mornings, and of course, the gossip spread fast. "So Ben," Darren called out with a smirk, "who's the one in the red Mustang?" "Looks like someone's got a cover model looking after him," someone else added with a low whistle. Ben allowed a faint smile, but stayed quiet. Kara was breathtaking, more striking than Rachel had ever been, if he was honest. But was that honesty, or just bitterness? The moment soured when another co-worker made a crude joke about him cheating with a redhead. None of them knew the real story. No one understood the pain behind it all. They just assumed he was bouncing back, no problem. Just as Ben was about to call it a day, a security officer rushed into his office. "You need to come out front. Right now." Ben's brow furrowed. "Why? What happened?" "Just come. You'll see." Outside, he braced himself. Maybe someone had trashed his car, smashed a window, slashed the tires. It was worse. Rachel's voice rang out, shrill and venomous. "You slut! Get away from my husband!" By his car, Kara stood firm, arms folded. "You walked away," she replied coolly. "You don't get to play the victim now." Rachel shrieked. "What are you even saying?" "You abandoned him," Kara said, her tone calm and level. "You drank until you couldn't see straight. You pushed him away." Security had already begun to separate them, but a small crowd had gathered, whispering and watching. Ben moved through them without hesitation. He didn't look at Rachel. He just reached Kara, opened the door, and gave her a quiet nod. "Go home," he said softly. "I'll be there soon." She searched his expression for a sign, then slid into the car and pulled away. Ben turned to the guard. "Keep her here for 10 minutes. Rachel's face changed in an instant, fear replacing rage. "Ben, no, please," she begged, struggling as security held her back. "Just let me talk to you. We can fix this." She screamed after him. "You still love me. I know you do." And the painful truth? She wasn't entirely wrong. But Ben didn't turn around. He got into his car and drove off, his vision swimming as tears welled up, but didn't fall. That evening, he sat on Kara's couch, staring at his hands, completely silent. "What are you thinking?" Kara asked gently. He exhaled slowly. I need to figure out what happened to my marriage." Kara looked at him for a long time. "Are you sure that's what you really want?" "Of course," he said without hesitation. She shook her head slightly. "I don't think it is." Without another word, she left the room. When she came back, she was holding a thick manila envelope. She placed the envelope delicately on the table between them, then instinctively stepped back, as though distance could lighten the weight of what she was leaving behind. "It's all there," she said, barely louder than a breath. "But please don't open it." Ben's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease tightening in his chest as he stared down at the envelope. "What exactly is inside?" She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "The first time I mentioned her, you told me I had no evidence, and you were right. I knew what I saw, but I also knew how easy it is to convince yourself it didn't happen. I've done it myself," she admitted, voice trembling as she fought for composure. "So I got help, hired someone to look into it, a private investigator." She hesitated, then added softly, "My cousin. He owed me a favor." Ben swallowed hard, a tightness forming in his throat. "And what did he uncover?" She nodded toward the envelope. "Everything. Pictures, audio, surveillance, documentation, transactions, every painful truth laid bare." "But if you still care for her at all," she said gently, "I'm warning you, don't look. You already know she shattered your trust. Seeing it in detail won't heal anything. It'll just rip open the wound. If you open it, you won't be able to unsee it, she said, her voice firm but kind. You finally started to heal, Ben. That will drag you back into the worst of it. Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked into the kitchen. You hungry? What should I make? Ben hesitated, fingers hovering just above the envelope. Then, almost against his will, he pulled out the first photo. It hit him like a punch to the stomach. Rachel sprawled out over a bar table, dress rucked up, 3 men closing in around her. His chest constricted, the edges of his vision blurred. He shoved the photo back in, flung the envelope across the room, and collapsed into the nearest chair, face buried in his hands as his entire body quaked. Kara sat beside him without a word, wrapping an arm around his shoulders in quiet solidarity. They didn't speak that night. Not a single word passed between them. But by sunrise, something fundamental had shifted. Ben and Kara both called in sick, then went straight to a lawyer's office. Sloane, Ben's attorney, flipped through the file. This won't be complicated, she said. No children, not many shared assets. The only bump is the medical debt. I'll handle it, Ben said flatly. Sloane looked up, brows raised. Why? She asked. You're drowning in expenses because of her. And this is how she repaid you? Ben didn't answer. Sloane sighed. Fine. It's still a straightforward case. If she refuses, we've got leverage. That leverage, everything in the envelope, was damning. It would leave Rachel's name in ruins. Ben nodded, ready to end it. But Rachel wasn't going down easy. When served, she didn't just decline to sign. She tore the papers into pieces. She refused to hire an attorney. Worse, she refused to acknowledge the divorce at all. I'm not signing anything, she barked. Instead, she demanded legal separation and suggested counseling. I just need time, she begged. Tell Ben to come home. We can work this out. Sloane wasn't buying it. If you won't agree to terms, we'll proceed under infidelity. That won't look good for you. Rachel let out a harsh laugh. You're going to need more than that, sweetheart, she sneered. I told you, I'm not giving up on this marriage without a fight. Sloane crossed her arms. If you think you can block this, hell, if it takes the Pope to annul this thing, I'll book your flight to the Vatican. Rachel's eyes narrowed. I won't lose him, not to you, and not to that red-headed whore. She insisted on a face-to-face conversation with Ben, no other option. Later that day, Sloane updated him. She's digging in, she warned. You'll need to meet her. If you don't, it could damage your case. 2 days later, Ben sat across from Rachel in the sterile quiet of Sloane's office. Her face was blotchy, her eyes rimmed in red. Why are you doing this to us? She asked, voice cracking. I'm not, he replied coldly. You did this. She drew a shaky breath. I lost control. I drank too much. I stopped being there for you. I know I hurt you, she whispered. Ben didn't respond. We've been together a decade, she said, voice breaking. That has to count for something. Ben's jaw clenched, his expression unmoved. I still love you, Ben, she said desperately. You lied, he said. You betrayed me. Over and over, it was never about us. It was always about what you wanted. Her lips quivered. I had cancer, she said, barely audible. His face darkened. So what? You don't know what that does to someone, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of everything she left unsaid. Going through something like that doesn't leave you the same. I just needed to feel alive again. I get it, Rachel, he said softly. You've got all the time in the world now. Do whatever feels right. I won't stand in your way. Sleep with strangers. Wake up in unfamiliar places. No one's going to care. He pushed his chair back and rose to his feet. Her voice wavered. You can't walk away from me like this. Ben placed a hand on the back of the chair, motioning for her to stay seated. You weren't alone through the cancer, he said. She blinked, caught off guard. What are you saying? He lifted his hand, silencing her before she could speak. We had cancer. His voice trembled, but his eyes stayed locked on hers, unwavering. I was there every damn day watching it tear you apart. His words grew sharper. At least you had the meds to numb it. I didn't. I had to sit there and watch. I stood by helplessly as the woman I loved disappeared right in front of me. Rachel lowered her gaze, unable to hold his stare. There were nights I would have done anything to take your place, he continued. I wished I could absorb the pain for you, but I stayed. I never left. His voice dropped, hushed but heavy with sorrow. I had to act like everything was okay, for you. I couldn't let you see me cracking. But I was. I was falling apart. And when visiting hours ended, I'd go home and break down. I was terrified I'd lose you. Tears welled in her eyes, threatening to fall. When it finally ended, I wanted to feel alive too, he said. But the person I came back to was drinking and sleeping around. She flinched at the words. And someone had to take care of the bills, he added, his voice turning cold. So here we are. You've got a new body, a second chance, and I'm buried in debt. Her hands curled into fists in her lap. You built this whole new future, he said, bitterness in his tone. And I wasn't in any part of it. You say you still love me? Then explain how it felt, knowing you were with other men. She drew in a ragged breath. I'm sure they were great, he said with venomous sarcasm. But where the hell were they when you were wasting away in that hospital bed? The room went quiet, oppressively quiet. Cancer didn't take your life, he said quietly, but it destroyed us. He pushed a stack of papers toward her, the divorce. Sign them. His voice was devoid of emotion. There's nothing left to talk about. And just like that, he turned and left. Rachel sat frozen in place, tears streaming silently, her eyes fixed on the paperwork before her. Outside the law office, Kara was already leaning on her car, waiting. She didn't ask how things went. She didn't need to. One look at Ben's face said it all, drained, hollow. Words wouldn't help, so she didn't offer any. When they reached the car, she tossed him the keys. He caught them reflexively, and for the briefest moment, a trace of a smile flickered across his lips. That car meant the world to him. The 2003 Mustang SVT Cobra, back in the day, they called it the Terminator. Drive us home, she said, giving him a small, knowing smile. He slid behind the wheel, gripping it tightly, his fingers pressing into the cracked leather. She doesn't have to sign, Kara said gently. The divorce will still go through. Ben kept staring at the windshield, unmoving. Can we just drive for a while? Kara shook her head, firm but kind. No, we've got the rest of our lives for that. She reached over and gave his hand a squeeze. But right now, you need food and rest. They pulled up to her house. Ben hesitated, reluctant to leave the safety of the car. He wanted to keep driving, lose himself in the rumble of the engine, feel something other than the ruins of what was. Kara didn't wait for him. She walked inside, letting her coat fall behind her as she moved. He followed, drawn in by the effortless grace of her movements. She didn't glance back as she loosened her blouse, letting it slip from her shoulders. A faint smile played at her lips as she ascended the stairs. One heel dropped, then the other. Halfway up, she peeled off her tights, twirling them before tossing them aside. At the top, she paused, turned her head. Her eyes found his, bold, inviting. Then she smiled and vanished down the hallway. Ben stood there, stunned, breath caught. For the first time in weeks, he felt something shift inside him, something that wasn't sorrow. Without thinking, he followed the trail of her clothes, moving up the stairs. He didn't know why. He just had to. She was waiting at the landing. Her hands reached behind her, unhooking her bra. It fell away, silent and effortless. His breath caught in his throat. "Come find me," she whispered. Then she turned and ran, a soft laugh echoing behind her. And in that moment, Ben finally understood what that old funk song meant. What drove him to act this way? Why had he always pursued something just beyond his grasp? In that moment, the fog lifted. He followed her down the hall to her bedroom, where the last shreds of hesitation had already vanished. She sank to her knees in front of him, fingers skillfully undoing the buttons of his shirt, lips painting soft trails across newly exposed skin. The distance between them evaporated. Every wall he'd spent years building to protect himself shattered. "Kara, he began, but she stopped him with a single touch. Where Rachel had been cautious and hesitant, Kara blazed with raw, fearless intensity. She didn't just offer herself to him. She claimed him, completely, unapologetically. In that moment of surrender, she gave him more than just her body. She offered him truth. No second guessing, no shame, no looking back. That night, she didn't just push away his past, she anchored him in the now. Kara understood betrayal all too well. She'd once loved a man who treated beauty like a currency and women like passing fancies. The third time she caught him cheating, she asked why. His answer was a shrug. "I always want something new." She walked out that day and never once turned around. Since then, she had searched for someone who could love as deeply as Ben did. So when she saw Rachel throw it all away, Kara made a silent promise. She wouldn't make the same mistake. What Rachel had discarded, she would treasure, and Ben would never again question his worth. As weeks slipped past, Rachel still refused to sign the divorce papers. Letting go was something she couldn't do. In a final attempt to regain control, she hired a private investigator, praying for proof of infidelity. If she could catch him, she could twist the truth, make herself the victim, rewrite the narrative, and pretend it was all just another storm they'd weathered. To her, their story wasn't finished. Yes, she'd messed up. Yes, Ben had distanced himself, but now it was time to make things right. She convinced herself he'd come back. Lately, she hadn't been feeling well. No one called. No one noticed her anymore. No one made her feel seen, not like Ben once had. When he returned, because he would return, everything would fall back into place. He'd hold her, fix what was broken, and love her the way he used to. He had to. Then one evening, she saw them. Through the glass of a cozy restaurant window, there they were, Ben and Kara seated close together. Kara reached across the table, her fingers brushing his face. Ben caught her hand, turned it over gently, and kissed her wrist. Something inside Rachel shattered. This wasn't an affair. Ben wasn't just passing time. He was in love. With her. The fury hit like a storm. She burst into the restaurant, knocking chairs aside in her rush. "Get your hands off my husband, you cheap whore!" she yelled. Kara remained still. "You gave him up," she said coolly. Rachel's hands curled into fists. "I never wanted to lose him." Kara tilted her head. "But you didn't love him enough to be faithful, did you?" "You're not taking him from me," Rachel hissed. Kara leaned closer, her voice like steel. "I already have." Rachel's face twisted with rage. "The hell you do." "I'll get rid of you first," she spat. Ben stood then. "That's enough, Rachel." She turned to him, a new barrage of fury rising, but the room spun. Her knees buckled, her skin turned ashen. "I don't feel right," she whispered, stumbling into the night. 3 months passed. Ben and Kara were married. Rachel never signed the divorce papers, but it no longer mattered. The cancer had come back, this time with no mercy. She was readmitted to the hospital. Doctors tried every option. Nurses did what they could with quiet compassion. But the chair beside her bed stayed empty. No one sat with her through the endless nights. No one held her hand. The man who had once been her anchor was gone, and with him, her strength faded. She wrote letter after letter, pleas full of sorrow and longing. She begged him to visit, to see her one last time. He replied just once, "Sign the papers and I'll come." She never did. The disease moved fast and brutally. Within weeks, she was gone. Ben and Kara were there at the funeral. When Ben stood to speak, his voice was steady and calm. He spoke of the woman he had once loved and the moments of happiness they had shared. He didn't mention the betrayals, the heartbreak, or the time they lost. He honored the beauty that remained and let the rest lie unspoken. As he finished, he turned to the mourners with a quiet intensity. "My wife and I have decided to name our daughter Rachel," he said gently. A murmur of surprise passed through the small crowd. Standing beside him, Kara took his hand and gave it a silent squeeze. Later that night, Ben sat by the fire, eyes lost in the flicker of flames. Rachel had once told him she'd beaten cancer. He'd believed it then, believed they had beaten it together. But now, he saw it clearly. She never truly had. She had turned into someone she no longer recognized. The moment she stepped out of the hospital, something inside her had shifted. A wild storm surged beneath her skin, chaotic, volatile, and unrelenting. Grief had consumed her entirely, seeping into every corner of her life, her marriage, her relationships, even her sense of self. And when the world refused to yield to her anguish, she began to fall apart, fragment by fragment. Ben exhaled softly, his gaze locked on the flickering fire. Kara rested against him, her hand cradling the gentle curve of her growing belly. Out past the edge of the porch, his Mustang stood in the moonlight, its surface catching the glow like a blade of silver. A faint smile played on his lips. She was here, beside him. A new life was beginning. The air hummed with tenderness and stillness. For the first time in ages, Ben felt it with clarity. This was happiness. Pure, unmistakable happiness. We've come to the end of our first tale, but don't rush to leave. There's another story waiting to pull you in. Let's continue. I once read about a study where more than 90% of respondents reportedly yelled the same thing right as they crashed. It wasn't one of those checkbox surveys either. People had to write their own answers. Kind of a weird time to find that funny, but I'd just joined the ranks. It was my first time actually being the cause of a wreck. I'd been hit before, sure, rear-ended at a light or scraped in a parking lot, but this time I was behind the mistake. My face went straight into the airbag, but strangely, I didn't feel much pain. Small mercies, I guess. The sharp chemical sting of radiator fluid reached me fast, hard to miss. That meant it was leaking. I could smell the brakes, too, that hot, bitter stench you never forget. But somehow, my thoughts stayed steady. The crash hadn't unfolded the way I'd always imagined. Then again, I wasn't sure I'd ever pictured exactly how it would go down. No scent of gasoline, no smoke. At least there was that. The engine had gone silent, taking the rest of my plans for the day with it. Deep down, I had kind of expected to just hit the wall and maybe crack the windshield. Turns out, I had grossly underestimated things. The truck didn't just bump into the wall, it tore right through it, like a battering ram, with no intention of stopping. If I'd had a mirror, I might have seen how far inside I'd driven. But with my face buried in the airbag, all I could do was guess. Time blurred after that. I don't know how long I was sitting there before a guy appeared at my window, breathless and clearly alarmed, asking if I was okay. I wanted to answer, but my face was basically suction-cupped to the airbag. Chaos had erupted outside. A woman was yelling that someone had been injured, her voice sharp with panic. She didn't seem to be talking about me, which, in a messed-up way, gave me a little comfort. Then the sirens started. You can always tell what's what by the sound. Fire engines have a different cry than ambulances, and I could hear both. The scene was starting to feel like a hospital on wheels had rolled up. As for me, They latched a winch onto the wreckage and yanked the truck out like it was being pulled from quicksand. I crawled out into the light, scraped up and sore, but otherwise okay. One ambulance was already gone. Another was prepping to leave with someone on a stretcher. A brief search from the cops was followed by cold metal cuffs and a ride in the back seat of their cruiser. Apparently, losing control of your own vehicle doesn't buy you a pass. Still, I wasn't looking at hard time. Oddly, I was thankful they didn't rush me out right away. It gave me a moment to really take in what I'd done. The wall wasn't just damaged, it had been annihilated. Door, window, even the air conditioner, gone. The truck had bulldozed all the way to the back, pinning a mattress and box spring in what looked like the bathroom. Rooms 6 and 10 seemed untouched, but room 8, obliterated. Good thing it was all ground level. Then I spotted Joe, just standing around the motel like he had any business being there. I'm not the brightest guy around, but I felt lucky I'd cut ties with him when I did. When the police asked questions, I clammed up. The orange jumpsuit I got later wasn't as horrible as I'd imagined. The metal cot, though, brutal. Even now, I think about whoever was staying in room 8. Like I said, I thought I'd bust a window, maybe dent the siding. I didn't expect to be grinning like an idiot afterward, but there it was. Oh, should probably introduce myself. Vince Clancy, 23, married to Ginny, who's also 23. After high school, we mostly drifted, killed time, made impulsive decisions. We tied the knot when she started to show. 2 months later, she miscarried. It wrecked me, but it hit her even harder. After 6 months in therapy, we decided to hold off on trying again. Some days, her emotions still come in waves. The shotgun wedding didn't just alter our relationship, it sidetracked everything, including college. I started working as an apprentice electrician. Ginny picked up temp jobs, usually behind reception desks. Some lasted a day, others a week, always filling in for someone else. Back in school, I played football and held my own. Ginny cheered for the girls' basketball team, one of 6 on the squad. She never missed one of my games, and I went to all of hers. Sure, she was probably there to support me, but I showed up to keep watch, especially when other guys got too interested. Most of the time, they backed off. Or maybe I just believed they did. Joe Clark was the worst of the bunch. Star basketball player, loudmouth, and serial flirt. We didn't roll in the same circles, but that didn't stop him from tossing crude remarks Ginny's way. She usually laughed it off. I tried to play it cool, but I've always been the jealous type. While I got an honorable mention for all-state football, Joe only snagged second-team all-conference in basketball, not that it meant much. His team was awful. Still, he managed to grab a tiny scholarship to a nearby D1 school, just enough to cover books and meals. He played summer ball after graduation, and, to everyone's shock, actually got some minutes during the season. He was decent, when his teammates didn't keep turning the ball over. Joe loved making appearances back home. He'd show up for homecoming or random weekends, usually with a couple of his college buddies. One of them was Nolan Larson, star player, loud talker, and a complete tool. Since Nolan's team was chasing a playoff berth, he was treated like royalty. People acted like he could walk on water. He hit on Ginny constantly, bold, brazen, even with me standing a foot away. Ginny would usually just laugh it off. Sometimes I had to step in, 'cause a bit of a scene. That never went over well. She'd roll her eyes like I was the problem. Turned out, Nolan and Joe were close, real close. Every time Joe swung back into town, Nolan was right behind him. I made a habit of finding excuses to keep busy whenever they were around. Homecoming weekend wasn't hard to sidestep, just a couple days. Summer was trickier. Weeks at a time meant more opportunities for fights between Ginny and me. She'd glare and snap, "You my husband or my security detail?" She'd remind me she wasn't some fragile damsel. "I can take care of myself," she'd say. "They're just loud, not dangerous. Drop it." Easy words. Not so easy to live by, not for someone like me. And it didn't help that Ginny had really come into her own. She turned heads now. When we went out dancing, guys whistled. I felt proud and jealous. A strange mix. Crazy? I didn't think so. But now, I'm not so sure. Mr. Clancy, I'm Scott Jensen. I'll be your public defender. He looked barely older than a college kid. Maybe he was. It was a little past 2 when he came in. Afternoon, Scott. Vince, I told him. So, he said, what do you remember about the crash? Just about everything, I replied. Was it deliberate? He asked. Not really. I only meant to rattle them a bit. I didn't think hitting the gas would cause that much destruction. You were going 30 when you slammed into the motel, he pointed out. That's no small speed, he added. I balled my fists, thinking back to that heat in my chest. Maybe I did stomp harder than I intended. But I didn't aim to smash through the damn building. That has to matter, right? Probably not, he said. You're looking at 2 counts of vehicular assault. And if Larson doesn't pull through, they might add attempted murder. Damn, I muttered. That's serious? Very serious, he said. Your truck launched the window AC clean into the room, nailed Larson right in the spine, massive internal injuries. Ironically, that may have saved their lives. The blast knocked them off the bed seconds before your truck pinned the mattress against the wall. How's the mistress? I asked. You mean your wife? Scott shot back. Larson got thrown into her, smashed parts of her face, lost several front teeth. As for Larson, let's just say he won't be walking away from this the same. A shame, I said. But they're alive, right? Nothing fatal? Not quite. They're both dealing with multiple broken bones. And once the bed got crushed into the bathroom, the mattress didn't help much. Larson may never walk again. I exhaled sharply. Hard to feel any pity, Scott. I get that, he said quietly. But how'd you know exactly where they were? Simple. I saw them go into room 8. They shut the door, and the number was right there. You're kind of green, huh, Scott? He looked rattled. Let me rephrase. How'd you know to be there at that time? I was bringing flowers. Anniversary surprise. Thought I'd take her out for lunch if she had time. She was covering someone's shift. I spotted her outside her office, waiting. A flashy car pulls up, she gets in. I follow. And once they reached the motel? He asked. They stopped at the front desk. Ginny got out. I waited for traffic to clear, then pulled into the lot. The guy in the sports car circled around. I followed. A few minutes later, Ginny came back out holding a key. She walked to room 8. He met her there. And then, Scott said, you know the rest. So you didn't actually see anything happen between them? I gave him a look. Really? You think they were rehearsing a surprise party in there? Come on. I'm just trying to piece it all together, he said. How long were you sitting in the truck before it happened? It took mere minutes for fury to seize complete control. My ability to reason vanished, leaving me lost in pure, unfiltered rage. I broke. No justification, just total emotional ruin. As I mentioned, my only intention was ever to scare them. Gradually, Ginny began to regain consciousness, rousing from a deep, medication-fueled sleep. She reached for the notepad and pen left by the nurse at her bedside. Where am I? What happened? She scrawled. The nurse replied softly, You're at Mercy General, Mrs. Clancy. There was an accident. A truck drove straight into your room. You suffered several broken bones and internal injuries. The doctors have kept you sedated. If you're still in pain, I can let them know so they can adjust your medication. How do you feel? Ginny's writing grew more urgent. My face is wrapped up and I can't open my mouth. Why can't I move my head? What happened to my arms and legs? The nurse offered a kind nod. Your legs and one of your arms are fractured and set in casts. Actually, you're immobilized in a full-body cast. Your face is bandaged, and your jaw has been wired shut. Also, there's a detective here who would like to speak with you whenever you're up for it. Shall I tell him you're ready? She nodded, scribbling her agreement. Yes. About 3 hours later, the detective arrived. Mrs. Clancy, I'm Detective Green. How is your memory? Her hand shook a little as she wrote her answer. It's not good. I don't remember any accident. The nurse said a truck hit me. The detective gave a small nod. Can you recall anything from Tuesday morning? She hesitated, then wrote, You mean this morning? He shook his head. Today is Friday. You've been in a medically induced coma for the past 10 days. Ginny's hand trembled as she responded. I remember getting ready for work, dressing up. Nothing else. What about lunch that day? He asked. Her gaze darted away before she wrote, I had lunch with someone, a friend. Who was the friend? She paused, then reluctantly wrote, Nolan Larson. Do you remember where you had lunch together? He pressed. She hesitated, pencil hovering. Eventually, she wrote, I can't remember. Is the Hump Day Motel familiar to you? He asked. Tears soaked into her bandages as she responded, We took a room. Nolan parked the car. Did the truck hit then? The detective was blunt. No, the truck crashed into the room while you were both inside. Ginny wrote again. Was it an accident? His voice hardened. Not exactly. Your little afternoon getaway wasn't the anniversary surprise your husband wanted. She shuddered. Our anniversary? Oh God. So your husband had no idea about this meeting? Her answer was immediate. No, he didn't know. That's all for now. Take care of yourself, the detective said, turning to leave. Elsewhere, the nurse whispered to the doctor, Has Nolan said anything yet? The doctor shook his head. No, not since he heard about the spinal injury. He won't walk again. The surgeon muttered, Such a waste of talent. The nurse sighed. Risking everything for an affair just wasn't worth it. My friends and family offered to cover my bail, but I refused. After all that had happened, I was finished. The threats, the consequences for Nolan, none of it made freedom appealing. I decided I'd serve my time, and when it was done, I'd vanish. Nobody would find me. 10 weeks passed before Ginny visited me. She arrived in a wheelchair, but managed to struggle to her feet and enter the visiting room on crutches. You're moving better than I expected, I remarked. Her tone was flat. I'm sorry for everything. Did you ever intend to actually hurt me? She asked. Not at all, I replied. I just wanted to scare you, to put an end to the affair. How's your voice? I asked, with half a smile. She snapped, That's not funny, Vince. I swear, I'd never cheated before. You put a stop to it before it crossed a line. How did I figure it out? She wanted to know. I picked up flowers for our anniversary, I explained. Thought I'd surprise you at work. You could have just told me if you wanted out, I added. Her voice thickened with emotion. I never wanted to leave. I don't know why I did it. He's famous. I got caught up in the excitement. You know he's paralyzed now? I said quietly. She nodded. Yes, they told me. I couldn't help myself. Maybe you two should sign up for the Special Olympics. You'd do great in a team sack race. She winced. I probably deserve that. I just wanted you to know I'm truly sorry. I hope your hearing goes off without a hitch, she murmured, her voice gentle but carrying a note of understanding. Sounds like you had quite an eventful day planned. I actually caught sight of Joe Clark sneaking around while I was sitting in the squad car. How did he even know you'd show up? Unbelievable. She paused, then added quietly, I'm sorry, Vince, before her composure finally gave way and tears welled up in her eyes. Honestly, jealousy wasn't eating at me anymore. My feelings for Ginny had faded, and whatever she did with anyone else no longer had the power to hurt me the way it once did. What truly stung was realizing just how easily I'd been deceived. Hey, if you ever find out where they took my truck, you'll see some flowers in the passenger seat. They were for our anniversary. I heard you went head-to-head with the big shot, I said. How'd that shake out? Ginny didn't bother answering. Instead, she shot me a middle finger, hauled herself upright with some effort, and shuffled back to her wheelchair. Good to see old friends, I muttered under my breath. Visitors really do make a difference. They break up the monotony. As my court date drew nearer, the days blurred together. I rejected every offer for bail. When the trial was just around the corner, I accepted a plea deal. Spending 1 year inside seemed a safer bet than risking decades if a jury decided I was guilty of attempted murder. If the basketball team lost, angry letters would fill my mailbox. When they missed the playoffs, I started getting threats. All this over a game. Scott's paralegal handled the divorce paperwork for me. Everyone involved had already signed off. It was only a matter of time before I'd be officially single. Scott, my attorney, made an unannounced visit not long after. "Been a minute," I said. "So, what's the latest?" "The DA's offering time served plus 2 years of parole," he reported. "Tell him I want permission to leave the state as soon as I'm out. The threats haven't stopped. Parole here isn't an option for me. Show him the letters, see if you can get a better deal." A week later, I was transferred to a halfway house to finish out the reduced sentence for the downgraded felony I pled to. In a matter of weeks, I'd be free, and hitting the road the same day. With no money, a criminal record, and my credit ruined, things looked bleak. Ginny stopped by again shortly before I was set to leave. She was moving easier now. Just a faint limp remained. "What brings you by, Ginny?" "The divorce is finalized," she said. "Last time didn't end well. I just wanted to apologize again. If I hadn't been there, none of this would have happened to you. Listen, Ginny, I'm here because I lost control. That's on me. I can't blame anyone else." I snapped. I could have left, filed for divorce, disappeared, but I didn't. Now I'm facing the consequences. She nodded. "I know you were angry about what I did. Like my new teeth?" "Still looking good," I replied. "How's your new guy?" "There's no reason to be cruel." I tried not to pay attention to rumors, but it was tough. Honestly, if I could have made one wish, just one, I'd have wished I arrived 10 minutes earlier with those flowers. Maybe things would have turned out another way. Maybe we'd still be together. Maybe I wouldn't have ruined my life. But life doesn't deal in what-ifs. And whatever higher power Ginny prayed to wasn't answering her calls. "So, where are you working now?" I asked. "I'm a receptionist at a stonemason's. Regular hours. No one waiting at home anymore. That's my own fault." "What's next for you when you get out?" she asked. "I'm heading out of state. Still get hate mail for supposedly ruining Nolan's career. I plan to stay under the radar for a while." "Think there's room for a disgraced woman in those plans?" she asked, managing a sad little grin. "Let me ask you this," I said. "Why'd you give up on us?" She shook her head. "I wish I could give you a real answer," she whispered. "But I can't. That's why I have to go my own way now. But thank you for offering." It was the memories of our happier days that helped me make it through all this. "If you ever change your mind," she told me, "you'll know where to find me. My arms will always be open to you." "Maybe. We'll see," I answered. "So, until next time?" "Thanks, but I think I'll pass," I said quietly. Silent tears streaked down Ginny's cheeks as she walked out. A few days later, I found myself being driven to the downtown bus station. The sky was overcast, and the wet sidewalks glistened even though the roads were dry. It fit my mood perfectly. I used my ticket to head for the city where my parents lived. They scraped together enough to get me a beat-up old truck and slipped me a couple $100 to help me start over. For them, that was a lot to give. I blew through that money in 3 days, crossing into 2 different states. There was work available, but not enough to pay for both food and shelter. My battered truck took me further down the road. I panhandled until I had enough for a cheap smartphone. Really, I just needed it to hunt for jobs online. And, against all odds, that was enough. I wound up working for a somewhat dubious construction crew who needed someone to take care of their electrical tasks. They handed out cash at the end of each shift. I made a few acquaintances there, but I was far less sociable than I'd once been. At that point, I was staying in a shabby motel that charged by the week. The woman at the far end of the hall was working as a prostitute, and strangely, the notion didn't bother me as much as I'd have expected. To clarify, it's not that I was considering getting into that line of work, but the idea of being one of her customers, that definitely had its appeal. My finances, unfortunately, didn't match my desires. One night, she caught me staring and slipped her robe open a bit. "Want to give it a try?" she teased, grinning. I chuckled. "Only if you're accepting IOUs." She cocked her head, still playful. "I'll think it over," she replied, as if this sort of thing happened all the time. "Doesn't look like you're proposing a trade. I doubt a call girl needs help with her electrical panel." Then she shot me a glance. "Pity. You've got that solid, rugged thing going for you." "I like a man who can take charge," she winked, still joking. "I'll keep that in mind if I ever hit it big," I replied. "Maybe one of your clients needs some electrical work? Anyway, I gotta freshen up before my next visitor." I let out a quiet laugh. We were just two lost souls floating through the night, doing what we could to get by. That night I barely slept. My mind kept wandering to what might have happened between us. God, I was desperate for an escape. A few days later, she showed up again. She passed me a torn piece of paper. "Told one of my regulars I knew an electrician. Here's his number." "Thanks," I said, surprised she'd bothered. "You didn't need to do that." She shrugged as she climbed into a car that looked a lot newer than mine. "See you around," she called, before pulling away. Back at the site, I asked the other guys what they charged for off-the-books jobs. With a ballpark figure in mind, I called the number she'd given me. A woman answered, which threw me for a second. Damn. What if I'd just called the wife of the guy who hired her? I kept things vague. "Hey, we have a friend in common who said you might need an electrician." "You do electrical work?" she replied. "What's your rate, and when are you free?" "I'm on the job till 6 during the week," I explained. "I can handle smaller projects in the evenings, but anything big will have to wait till the weekend. I usually charge less if it's a day's work, more if it's just by the hour." I waited, hoping I hadn't blown it. She stayed on the line, and after a quick exchange, I learned her name was Deb. She gave me an address. We decided I'd stop by that Saturday morning to check things out. When I arrived, I was surprised to see it was in a gated community. After confirming I was expected, I navigated a maze of manicured lawns. Only one car sat in the driveway. I guessed the husband was out golfing. Deb herself looked to be about my mom's age and wasn't wearing a ring. Things didn't quite make sense. She needed a new GFCI outlet installed in her bathroom, plus wanted to replace a few switches with motion sensors. Photos of people in their 20s decorated the place. No sign of a man in any of them. There was just one pillow on her bed. It was becoming clear there probably wasn't a husband. I gave her an estimate, and she paid me up front so I could buy materials. After a quick trip to Lowe's, I had everything finished before noon. While I worked, she set down a cold soda and a plate of cookies. "So, how'd you hear I needed an electrician?" she asked, trying to sound casual. My mind went blank. What was I supposed to say? "Oh, just an escort worker from the dump where I'm staying." I was improvising. I was talking about work, and she overheard that I was an electrician. Reddish blonde, about 5 feet 5 inches tall, I think. "Right," Deb said, nodding. "I might know some people who need your help too. Can I give them your number?" "That'd be a big help," I told her. "Money's tight right now." She gave me a long look, her eyes sparkling. "Got any other talents I should know about?" Now I was caught off guard. Was she flirting? Was she close with the woman from the motel? Was she just messing with me? My face got hot. I forced a laugh and rolled with it. I'm young, I work hard, and I'm not afraid to sweat. "I'll keep that in mind," she replied with a mischievous smile. My thoughts wandered for a moment, but I pocketed the cash and headed out. Barely 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The caller ID was blank. I answered. "Vince here." "Hi, glad I caught you," a woman said. "Deb passed along your contact info. I'm just a couple houses away from her. Any chance you can stop by? Sure, I said. Just need to grab some lunch first. She gave me the address. I made a note, finished my food, and drove over. It took a while to get through security since I didn't have her name, just the address. Eventually, they let me in. When I arrived, both garage doors were open and 2 cars sat inside. I pulled my battered car up to the curb, instantly aware of how out of place it looked amid the pristine driveways and gleaming SUVs of this neighborhood. There was no denying it was the shabbiest ride for blocks. I rapped gently on the front door, not sure what kind of reception I'd get. The door swung open to reveal a girl, young, pretty, and already bored with me. You needed someone for handyman stuff, right? I asked. She let out an exaggerated sigh. Mom! The guy's here! She hollered, turning her back and strolling off. As she walked away, I couldn't help but notice she had quite the silhouette. Not long after, a woman appeared who was clearly her mother. They had the same eyes. You must be Vince, she guessed. Can you put up ceiling fans? Of course, I said. Can you handle motion-activated switches too? That's not a problem. I'd also like extra outlets in the garage, she added. No problem. I can take care of all of it, I told her with a grin. Anything else? She smiled. Perfect. Come on in. Once we'd gone through her project list and I'd jotted down a few notes, I asked, So, have you already picked up all the hardware and parts? I tried to keep it light. Or should I just call you the mom with the teenager who's allergic to politeness? She laughed. I'm Nancy, and that's Jolene. She's annoyed because her boyfriend's running late. Don't mind the attitude. All good, I assured her. So, nothing's been bought yet? Not a thing. We could make a run to Lowe's, if you're up for it. But first, what's your ballpark price for everything? I crunched some numbers and wrote out an estimate on the back of an envelope. She took a quick look and said, All right, let's go. Do you want to drive? I don't mind, I replied, shrugging. But her eyes fell on my rusty old car and she changed her mind instantly. Actually, she said, I'll drive. My car's got the space we'll need for all this stuff. If you say so, I chuckled. It's been a while since I've ridden in anything half as nice as what you're driving. By the time I finished up all the jobs, the sun was dipping below the tree line. Jolene stuck around, obviously still stewing over being ditched, but she kept sneaking glances in my direction out of curiosity. With all the tasks and a surprisingly generous tip, I walked away with almost $1,000 in my pocket. If you've never lived paycheck to paycheck, it's hard to explain the unease of suddenly having that much cash. I hardly slept that night, convinced everyone I passed could somehow tell I was carrying a small fortune. I decided I'd open a bank account and get a debit card as soon as the bank opened Monday. With my money tucked safely away, I decided to get out of the house that evening. The thought of paying for some company had crossed my mind, but even though the idea tempted me, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I ended up at a local bar, grabbing a stool with no real plan. I wasn't looking for anything or anyone, but apparently, I'd drawn some attention. You planning to just sip that beer all night? A woman asked, sauntering over with an amused grin. Some of us actually put in the effort to look good, and you're not even noticing. I glanced up. She was definitely attractive. I gave her an obvious once-over and said, Yeah, you're dressed to impress. She waited, expecting me to say more. After a moment, she pressed, That's all? No offer to buy me a drink? Not even a dance? I shook my head, smiling a little. Looks like you're the one doing the hunting tonight. Figured I'd let you take charge. With a roll of her eyes, she spun around and went back to her friends. I could almost hear her complaining about me. Honestly, I hadn't come out to flirt or pick up anyone. I just wanted a drink and some time alone with my thoughts. About 30 minutes later, another woman took the seat beside me, the only one in the place not out dancing. You're not checking out the guys, she observed. Let me guess. Women problems? Not anymore, I replied. So, what's your deal? She asked. Trying to figure out what starting over really means, I admitted. Want to talk about it? She offered. Not really. I'm good just enjoying my beer and the view. What about you? Why are you here? My friends and I just come out to drink and dance. Most of the guys think we're on the prowl, but that's not it. Of course, plenty of women here are looking, some even married if you're into that sort of thing. Didn't expect a scene like this in a small town, I admitted. We don't think of it as small. You're not from around here, are you? Guilty. I grew up in the city, but bars were never really my thing. How come? You look like you'd fit in. I got married pretty young. Money was tight, so a night out usually meant a potluck or just hanging with friends. So I take it that marriage didn't last, she said, glancing at my empty ring finger. That's right, I confirmed. She stood, ready to return to the action. Well, I'm here to dance. If you're not going to ask, I'll see you around. Ashley, she said, introducing herself. Vince. Good meeting you, Ashley. As she disappeared into the crowd, it hit me that I'd developed a real talent for making women roll their eyes and walk away shaking their heads. That night, lying awake, I realized what I'd really been missing wasn't physical intimacy. It was genuine human connection. Even a simple conversation with Ashley had eased something heavy inside me. I started making regular appearances at the bar, grabbing whatever passed as dinner most nights. My goal wasn't romance, just a little company. The next time Ashley and her group came in, I asked her to dance. They offered me a seat at their table, but I turned them down with a smile. Inside, I was a wreck, torn up by conflicting emotions and confused about what I actually wanted. Then another call came through, a referral, courtesy of the job I'd done for Deb. This one was on the other side of town. My Saturday was spoken for. That Friday, I sat on my usual bar stool, picking at a snack of pickles, a hard-boiled egg, and a few pretzels, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked up and saw her reflection in the mirror. Ashley. Where's everyone else? I asked. She grinned. They're watering the horses, she joked. Now come on, grab your food and join me, she called over her shoulder as she headed for a table. It didn't sound like a request, more like a direct order. So I went along. Can I buy you a drink? I offered once I sat down. She shook her head. Don't worry about it. I know you're counting your pennies. I'll pay for mine. That caught me by surprise. How do you know about my money situation? I asked. She gave a knowing smile. Your clothes, your truck, the way you eat? Should I keep going? She wasn't wrong. I keep it low-key these days, I admitted. So, what about you? She leaned forward. Got a degree I'm not using. I'm at a distribution center for now. I could have moved, but I stuck around. Figured I'd see how things played out. I'm single, never tied the knot, no serious boyfriend. Your turn. I exhaled. Knocked up my high school girlfriend. College never happened. We rushed into marriage, but she lost the baby. Then I found her at a motel with another guy. I drove my truck through the room. The guy's in a wheelchair now. I did time. We divorced while I was locked up. Seriously? She said, eyes wide. I pulled up the news story on my phone and handed it to her. She read quietly, then looked up. And you still want to get to know me? I asked. She held my gaze for a moment. That must have flipped your life upside down. You have no idea, I said. I never meant to hurt anyone, but that didn't matter in court. Prison changes you. I've only been out a month. Don't let appearances fool you. Anything else I should know? She asked. I do electrical work off the books, take odd jobs on weekends. Aside from that one incident, I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. And what are you spending tonight? She asked. Maybe $20 tops. Let's go, she said. You need better clothes. We're going to the thrift store. My instincts split. This is trouble, but maybe the good kind. I gave in. She drove. Why are you doing this? I wanted to know. Because you won't do it for yourself, she said. You're still young. Your life isn't over. Time to start moving forward. What's in it for you? I pressed. If you turn out to be a decent guy, maybe I'll let you take me out, she teased. I spent $30 and left with a few shirts and a couple of pairs of pants. She dropped me off at my truck. "Thanks, Ashley," I said as I got out. "Can I take you out sometime?" "I was starting to wonder if you'd ever ask," she grinned. "Wear something from your new haul. Meet me at the mall theater tomorrow at 6. Sleep didn't come easy that night. My mind was racing. When Saturday morning rolled around, I went off to another job, just like always. I had almost $1,600 to my name, but I set aside $50 for the evening. By 4, I was dressed in my new jeans, but my only shoes looked ridiculous. So I went back to the thrift store and grabbed a decent pair for under $10. I assumed it'd just be the two of us. But at the theater, Ashley was waiting with a friend who'd also brought a date. Maybe that's just how it goes for an ex-con. People are careful. Still, we watched the movie and had drinks after, and it was a good time. But in conversation, I was lost. They traded college stories and inside jokes I couldn't follow. Ashley didn't notice how out of place I was. When it was time to go, she kissed me. Quick, but the hug that followed lingered. That's what I realized I missed most. The feeling of being held. I handed her a slip of paper with my number. "Now you can reach me," I said. "I don't have your number," she murmured, almost to herself. "Give me a call, if I haven't scared you off yet." She slid a slip of paper into her shirt, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything felt like it was falling into place for me, until, suddenly, it all came apart. That Tuesday, I was filling up my truck when I noticed Ashley, arm in arm with another man, heading into a nearby diner. We'd only ever been friends, but the sight of her with someone else hit me harder than I expected. It felt like a storm of anger and loss broke inside me. Frustration, disappointment, and that helpless feeling I thought I'd buried with Ginny's memory. Old wounds tore open. My gut reaction was to leave, and I didn't fight it. I wasn't prepared to walk through that emotional minefield again. Ashley hadn't done anything wrong, but I didn't want to hang around and sort out how I felt. My motel room was paid for until Friday, so I had a few days to figure out my next move. The answer landed in my lap when my boss mentioned that a buddy out of town was looking for an electrician. By Friday morning, I was already on the highway, putting hundreds of miles and all that confusion behind me. My phone vibrated as I drove. Out of habit, I answered. "Vince, where have you been?" "I took another job, out of the area," I said. "You never called, so I couldn't tell you I was leaving. Still, thanks for helping me break out of my rut." "Are you coming back?" she asked. "I doubt it," I admitted. "But I've got your number now. Who knows? Maybe our paths will cross again." Her voice softened. Maybe I even heard it tremble. "I guess I should have called sooner." "Don't worry about it," I said. We drifted into some light conversation and reminisced a bit, and just like that, my story with Ashley drew to a close. My parents wanted me home for the holidays, but they understood why that wasn't in the cards. Not yet. Sooner or later, some new hometown star would make everyone forget about me. I dated around a little after that. One woman even convinced me to check out a swingers party. Sure, the novelty was exciting, but with every new face, I realized more clearly I wasn't ready for anything deep or lasting. Being someone's sidekick for a night doesn't exactly fill the void. "Cold fish," I heard one woman mutter after a date. She wasn't wrong. My heart was locked up tight, and I intended to keep it that way. If you never race your horse, it'll never lose. It's the same with your heart. Hide it away, and it stays safe from being crushed. 3 years slipped by before I finally booked a flight to see my folks. Life was steady enough now that I could afford it. The local basketball team was doing well, playoff bound, so coming home felt less loaded, less likely to stir up old pain. Nobody brought up Ginny. That was a relief. The flight back went smoothly. I chatted with a woman about my age. Nothing serious, no names or numbers exchanged. But Heather didn't forget me. She worked at a cafeteria downtown, in one of the big buildings by Broadway. Still single, still holding out for the right guy to walk through her door. She'd noticed this quiet man who always stopped in for cherry pie with lunch. His name badge read Vince. He worked at an investment firm, but you wouldn't guess it from his clothes. There was something about him that made her curious. No ring on his finger. Maybe he was worth a shot. One day, Heather asked her manager for a bathroom break, but really she was just hanging out near the tray return. As I passed, she handed me a note. "Call me sometime, Heather," along with her number. I grinned. So did she. We exchanged a nod. A few days later, we had dinner together. Nothing fancy, a quiet spot near her apartment. It turned out to be a much more honest conversation than I expected. I told her about my work, handyman jobs, part-time electrician at the firm, and I laid it all out. I had a felony in my past. I even pulled up the old news article to prove it. "That was 4 years ago," she said after reading. "Do you still think about her?" she asked. "Ginny? No. That's over." "Then why's a decent guy like you still single?" "It comes down to risk," I said. "I'm not sure I could handle putting my heart out there again. What if I just fall apart?" "So you have trouble trusting people?" she asked, her tone gentle. "It's more that I don't trust myself not to break if things go wrong. The last time, it wasn't even a real relationship. We never even kissed. But seeing her with someone else, something inside me snapped." "When did that happen?" she wanted to know. 3 years back. I've been keeping my distance ever since." "Okay, I get it," she said. "But can we take it slow? Just promise me this. Talk to me first. I don't want to lose something before it's had a chance." "And what if I realize I'm still not ready for anything real?" I asked. "Then you won't show up tomorrow night for dinner, or the movie afterward." Her words lingered in the air. I could tell she meant everyone. I reached out and she took my hand. Vince looked at me, his voice soft. "See you tomorrow." As he walked away, something fluttered inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this one would be worth the risk. It wasn't easy. Not by a long shot. I've always been outgoing, the kind of person who enjoys the company of others, while Vince has always needed steady reminders that he's the only man who matters to me. He draws his strength from closeness, both in touch and in heart. It's not uncommon for me to nestle into a good book, settled in his lap as he loses himself in a televised sports match. After our relationship turned romantic, his desire to make sure I was his became almost overwhelming. That period was challenging for us, but we managed to get through it side by side. Once I understood where his behavior was coming from, handling it became less daunting. We've now been married for 10 years. Since the day we exchanged vows, the only time I've danced with someone besides Vince was with his dad at our wedding reception. I haven't gone out late with my female friends, and Vince is always included whenever I get together with others, even if we're just going out to shop. Together we're raising 2 children, our daughter, who's 6, and our son, who's 3. Between their arrivals, I suffered a miscarriage, which was deeply painful for us both. To help us process the grief, we went to counseling together, and I encouraged Vince to continue therapy on his own as well. His past has left him with wounds, but he is still the person I choose every day. I truly don't think I could ever meet someone capable of loving as fiercely as he does. I know what's at the root of his hurt, and each morning, as I look in the mirror, I promise myself to make sure he never doubts how much I love him. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.